Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where the blueprint to understanding a new and unified world is in our shifting consciousness. Now here are your hosts, Angela Blaha and Velia Person.
Hey everyone, we are coming at you today live and two of us.
And together.
Can you imagine?
Excited to be here hanging out with Angela. We made it to this awesome location. We've been hanging out for a few days, going through our healing process, and it's been quite an adventure, right?
Quite an adventure.
Angela's going to start us off with the title of today's podcast, so you guys know where we're going with it.
Well, I really want to talk about what it means to be in crisis. And because we experience crisis a lot, but it seems like we're experiencing it exponentially right now. And it also feels like it's on multiple levels. Like when we are activating ourselves and moving through these upgrades that we are, working towards in this blueprint for the new world, there's crisis. And we can relate to that crisis just personally, but we can also relate to what's going on in the world right now, which is one crisis after another, after another, after another. And how do you get through these times of crisis? Well, for me, I have to become an inquiry machine, literally, because I have to understand there is something about, so here's an example of being in crisis. Like last week, I felt like creating this new earth was not taking in the components of the human mind and the understanding. I'm not talking about the logic of the human mind. I'm talking about the understanding, because we are creating machines, meaning, like we have to have meaning for everything. And so I felt like the Universal Council wasn't taking in that consideration, which in my viewpoint has been what we've experienced, all these other wipings. So that's a whole different story. But what I did was I demanded of my soul self and of the Universal Council to take that consideration in, because we are the ones who are living here doing what works and what doesn't work. And when it's times of these kinds of crisis where we really want to evolutionize ourselves, we have to be able to understand what's happening. And so that was a huge crisis for me. And it was like I got so stinking passionate that I was angry, and it was like, okay, but it has to be like this, because we have to be able to, certain things had to be met, in my opinion. And long and behold, they were met. So we are now sitting at the table in this amazing and beautiful transformation that we have. So that's my crisis of the week.
Crisis of the week. Stay tuned for more, because we have a few weeks to go. And I love how you share the crisis. So crisis looks different for all of us, right? Some of us go down and we have to go down fighting. Some of us just ask a whole bunch of questions. And then in my experience, I found just wanting to volunteer to help humanity do whatever, just whatever passion came from that. And there's times where I ask questions. There's times where I don't. There's times where things are clear, in time where it's very unclear. But there's kind of an inner knowing of what we're going to have to be doing during these times. And it's going to look different for everybody. So don't feel because you are having what you can describe as, oh my gosh, crisis, or just a hard time. You get to decide what that looks like for you and how to heal through it. But there's going to be a whole bunch of different tools that we're going to share with you guys to help you embrace the changes that are taking place. So not all of us are okay with change, especially when there are like lots of crisis going around. Like you had shared with me this week, I don't really watch the news, and she had shared with me that there was a bunch of earthquakes happening, some train derailments, and I'm looking at it and I'm surprised that I don't have a reaction to it. Now, back in the day, I would have felt like a horrible person because I didn't have an emotion attached to the crises that are taking place on the planet, right? So we're learning more and more as these things, as the new things are being created, a lot of the old things have to literally die out. So it's a literal thing. Like there's going to be a lot of crisis, a lot of tragic happening. And the goal is to get ourselves to a place where we're allowed to continue to do what we have to do without getting caught up in the smoke screens that are happening. Not to say they're not important, not to say it's not something that We shouldn't be, giving some love towards and healing, right? But I find that there's a lot of distractions happening. And it kind of goes back when we think about, the past wipings and all that good stuff that we're going to be sharing as we go on, right? Like, what did we learn from it? And we were having a conversation, and Angela referred to like going to councils and saying, hey, we're not going to keep doing the same crap over and over again. Something has to change. And I think a lot of us kind of hope, man, I hope they're going to tweak it and then something different is going to happen. But you see that it's kind of happening over and over again. And we can, pretty much describe it like in government, right? We just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again. And if nobody stands up and asks questions, things are going to continue to happen the same way as long as we allow it. So the goal is to take your power away from the things that you are actually feeling bound to or imprisoned by. And there's going to be a self-awareness, a self-assessment process that you're going to have to go through to figure out what those things are. And I like to use the example of like what's keeping you stuck, right? And it could be a whole bunch of things. So we're going to unpack that a little bit more.
Yes. So, in my opinion, following the narrative will never get us anywhere. It hasn't in the last 26,000 years, which has been this cycle that we've worked through. And if we continue to follow just a narrative, it will never get us anywhere, and we will end up doing a wiping probably again. However, we're trying really hard not to do that this time because I don't really want to come here and start all over. And so how do we like literally move forward, and how do we not follow a narrative? Well, for me, seeing a 360 viewpoint. So what I do is I energetically take myself out of my body, out into the cosmic field, or out into the upper boundaries of the Earth's field. And then I look down and I see all the narratives. So getting really good at understanding frequencies and vibrations, that has helped me to see where things play out, or I can follow lines of vibrations that way. That's just a teaching yourself how to see and understand vibrations. It's not hard. Don't make it super hard. It's just a quantum physics that you can do. And you can feel them. Lots of people use their emotional body to feel frequencies or vibrations. I have the ability to see most of the time, and so I can see them and I can understand how fast they vibrate. I can understand if they're true or if it's a narrative. So I've trained myself over the years how to sort of do that. So that's one way that I use my abilities, my intuitive abilities, to see truth versus what the narrative is. So what are things that you do?
Couple of things. I think what I want to touch on is how to do those things if you don't have that ability, right? Because if you can quantum leap and go to different things and you can see because you've trained for so long, like how do we help people who don't have that ability, right? Or don't know they have the ability? Because I think that we all do have abilities to do things. We've just never been trained in them. We don't have awareness. For me, I see pictures. I do trust a lot more. Like I don't ask as many questions as Angela for some reason, right? And I used to think, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I should be asking questions. But it goes back to all of us being designed differently, right? And we talked about it earlier this week. Like we're all going to have pieces of the puzzle. And it's our job to learn how to communicate what those pieces are. First, we have to understand how we even get them, what they mean, right? Because back in the day, I used to have all kinds of visions to be like, what the heck is this? Just last night, I have a dream. I'm here. We're going through this process of healing. And I'm like, I had some really weird dreams that I kept hopping around. So I need her to bounce things off of, right? So I think that's what we're all supposed to do. Like everybody is uniquely created and designed, and all of us are going to play a part in this creation. And, even though like Angela had mentioned that she can see things, there's times where we can see it. And we've experienced that this week where we're just kind of trusting the process, knowing that we're called here for a reason and we're going through the motions, and you can't see past your nose sometimes, but there's something inside of you, inside of us, that just says keep going. And it's kind of creepy to keep going when you can't see. So if you don't see, if you don't know exactly what it is, that's okay. We have to get rid of all the crap that's blinding us to be able to see these things, because everybody has the ability to see these things. We have to just get the belief systems out of the way that taught you that you weren't powerful, that you had to depend on somebody else. So, working in teams is a beautiful thing, but it's not like anybody's better than anybody else, because everybody has something unique to bring to the table. So our goal with this podcast is for you guys to really understand yourself in such a way where you know what's blocking you from getting to where you have to get to. And even though it can feel a little bit overwhelming, there is ways, and we just, chip at it a little bit at a time. And then before you know it, you're creating this amazing human at this time that is being called to literally become an architect of this new world. So all of you who are listening, we all know that you already have some kind of calling. Like, you're supposed to be listening to this podcast. You're supposed to be asking certain questions, right? You're supposed to not be repeating certain patterns, but the how to do it is what really overwhelms a lot of people from what I've had in my experience, right? So what do you think?
Well, and trusting, like some of these things are like off the wall, batshit crazy, let me tell you. But and we can easily go down the rabbit hole of, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, and am I crazy? Like, literally, I've asked myself that recently. But the trust is deep within me, and I know that sooner or later things are going to turn out intuitively. Like, I'm trusting, I'm going 100% in here and trusting that my soul's guiding me in the direction that I need to go, as not just as a human being, but as a soul being, and the real deeper meaning of who I am. So that whole trust factor, when we're making these kinds of transitions, or when we're in crisis, like, trusting those inner knowings is the most important thing that you can do for yourself. Even if you don't have any intuitive abilities, or you don't trust your intuitive abilities, or you haven't trained with them enough to trust them, trusting yourself, trusting the inner part of you that probably will go against the grain. It will go against the narrative, guaranteed. I mean, that is a guarantee. It will sooner or later go against the narrative. And, being so confident in the trust of who you are, like, that's the one thing, I think. Yeah. And that even proved to be a factor for us, like I'm transitioning probably 5 out of 7 days a week. And even that was probably the main thing that I had to overcome in the beginning of, are we really doing this shift in consciousness? Even though I've known since I was a child that I was here for the shift in consciousness, here we are. And it's like, okay, what do I do now?
It's really happening.
It was a crisis. It was like, oh, I'm going to freak out if we actually are here and we actually are doing this. It was like a dream before, and now the dream's coming into reality. And that trust factor that's the hardest thing, I think. And we have never been trained to trust ourselves, and we are not trained to trust. We're trained to trust the narrative. We're trained to trust everything outside of us, but we're not trained to trust our innermost knowledgeable self, our higher self, whatever you want to call it. Right. And so that is, if you're going to start anywhere, start with that, because it's huge. And questioning the narrative is part of beginning to understand yourself, because you start to see things, even though you might know things in a different way, you start to see where the divide becomes, and where the domination and control becomes a reality versus your truth. And each one of us have a different version of truth based on our perceptions, which is also based on our past. But if we can sort of weed through those perceptions, our own experience perception, then we can start to see what's the bigger picture here and what is really true here. So we're going to have more crisis in the future. We're humans. That's what we do. We live in a world of polarity still. And in polarity, there's always going to be some type of a crisis.
Yeah. I love how you shared that trusting yourself is hard, but it's only hard, and you also cover because nobody taught us. Mm-hmm. There's something wrong, and I'm going to say wrong, with you feeling a certain way and you saying, is that bad? Like, you double checking with somebody. I have people all the time, I feel this and that, whatever, is that bad? Right. And they're looking for validation and confirmation. And I'm thinking, holy crap, as a society, we've trained people to not trust themselves. Mm-hmm. We've literally done it backwards. Like, people have trained us not to trust ourselves, so we can look to them for clarification, for confirmation, for authority, or whatever. And it was literally set up that way, you guys, so we don't succeed. That was on purpose. Everything they did was on purpose. Yes. And we don't have to go so far, Angela. Like, there was a crisis a couple of years ago, right, where the whole planet, or the whole everything was shutting down. And now I think that people pulled out of there a little wiser because everybody was doing what they were told. This is the right thing to do. And, take care of yourself and everybody else. And you're going through all this stuff. And then, if you do this, you won't get this again. And guess what? Turned out to be a whole bunch of lies. And so I know that humanity is like, what the hell? You said if I did this, this wouldn't happen, and this and that. So I think a lot of people are going through the awakening process, and what they were meant to use for something that harmed us and dominated us and manipulate us and control us even more, literally backfired on them. Like they cannot stop what's coming. And they've tried all their tips and tricks and all that good stuff, whatever. But you know what I find? There's a lot of residual left over. We talk about it all the time, is that we've been damaged in such a way where we can't do something simple as trust ourselves. And we say it's simple because we went through the whole, oh my gosh, am I right? Am I crazy? Should I get confirmation from the Spirit? We were left alone to our own devices. And that's what we talked about. Like last year, it was so much of like, just know that you know that you know. And it's like, how do I do that? And you literally tap into different multidimensional selves of you. And so when Angela talks about, you as a soul being, you as a human, I think it's important. And we talk about it all the time, to talk to the human, because the human understands different than our soul does. The soul wants us to know everything, and the goal is to connect the two. But before we can do that, it's like you have to know the human and you have to know the soul, and then you introduce them to each other. So even though we're not separate, as a society, we were taught to look at it differently, because the soul's so happy to come in and show you where to go, what to do, and how to do it. But the human, the 3D, and then the way we've been programmed has a hard time merging with that. So the goal, again, for these type of conversations is like, hey, don't believe what we're telling you. Look at what's transpired in your life here on the planet, in this life only, right? And for a lot of you who can tap into past life remembrances, it's not that far. It's not very different than what's happening now. So as we talk about the repeated patterns, like we literally have to go through a detox process, right? And we talked about it last week when we shared about blowing up your consciousness, right? A lot of the training that we're going through, the healing that we're experiencing, it's going to happen automatically. But I do know that a lot of us, if we haven't been okay with releasing the ways of thinking that we literally created during crisis times, right? It's going to continue to follow us. So when you say, I volunteer, right? Like now we're volunteering all over again. I remember making jokes about incarnating, like, oh, hell no. If they ever asked for me to incarnate again, oh, hell no, I'm not going. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to volunteer again consciously in this body. And I'm like, I volunteer again. And then I'm like, what the heck? Wait a minute. I said I would never do that again, right? But I'm like, I don't want them to wipe us and feel like everything we did was worth nothing. So I think I'm taking all the love, the trust, the knowledge that I've attained, that I continue to want to attain, right? To say, let me take this over into something, in an environment that's going to actually help it be more sustainable. And that's what we're doing. We're literally creating this new earth. But in this creation, you guys, there are aches and pains. There are going to be experiences. There are going to be crises in your own personal world and in the world around you, in the environment. The goal is to create this human in you that will be happily connecting to that soul of you and can look at other yous that are everywhere else attaining all this information, and you learn how to tap into it. So in times of, crisis, you're not going to get what you need from your husband or your wife. You're not going to get it from your kids. And I think a lot of us have done that. We thought that this person, this other human, was responsible to soften the blows. There's times, and Angela joke all the time, like our husbands are just the happiest humans. They love being human. I shared my husband's out there in Vegas with his friends. They're doing Super Bowl, whatever. And he's like, yeah, rooting for whatever team's happening. And then I'm over here like blowing up old cells and getting new creations. And then Angela's like, oh God, why do we have to do this, right? And we know why, but the human part of us still wants to complain about it. But I know I can't call my husband as much as he loves me to say, hey, I'm blowing up some cells. Like, we don't want to wipe the earth again. So we're going to go. I mean, although he loves me, he doesn't understand. But I honestly thought that he was supposed to help guide me through this process, or that he was supposed to somehow wake up one day and come alongside of me. And I had made a comment to you a few weeks ago that I was sitting down one day and I said, oh my gosh, my husband's such a happy human that I would hate for him to know all this stuff, because I don't even know if I can figure out how to like walk him through. So it kind of brought us back, right? Angela shared a little bit about her husband. He's a happy human. He loves to fish. And she's over here having to die again. And, he's just fishing and having a good old time. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful thing, right? For a long time, I was kind of jealous of that. So this is why I share it, because when you're going on this individual journey, you guys, it doesn't matter how much your human others love you. This is your journey. You're going to be expected to pull your little tips and tricks and tools and everything. And if you don't have them, you have to look to people like us who are experiencing it, because how can they help guide you through it, even if they love you, if they have no idea what you're experiencing? If they're still caught up in the matrix or the old way of being, they didn't get the call. You did. And now we're called to be responsible. We're called to allow ourselves to be in a place where, I don't want to call it neutral, Angela, but what would you tell people, like, okay, we're going to go through some crisis. Don't lose your shit. But like, how do we even help them do that, right? Go back and think about the experiences that we've had. Like, what advice would you give them to stay focused?
Well, I think if we're talking about trust, it's okay to lose your shit. I mean, really, especially if it provokes passion or deeper knowing, or, like that's what happened to me last week. Like I kind of lost my shit. And I was like, wait, we're not even considering the human perspective here. We're not even considering the human mind of understanding. And like I went in demanding to the Universal Council, I don't demand too often because
but when she does.
But when I do,
everybody's losing their shit.
This has got to happen. But so it's okay to lose your shit sometimes. The important thing I think that we want to really invoke into you is that there's support all around you. Even though our husbands are sort of like happy being humans, they're very supportive in other ways, like very supportive. I couldn't do this without my spouse being totally unconscious, probably about, well, he's not totally unconscious, but like doesn't really want to be involved. He doesn't want to be involved. He just wants to play out his life and be happy.
Right.
And which is perfect. But that's a support that I don't think I could do if it was any way different.
Yeah.
But there's other supports out there, like people who are going through the shift in consciousness. Like we're doing the thing. We're making the tracks, we're paving the way, we're, axing down all of the trees before us. And we're experiencing it on I'm going to say a pretty deep level here, because I, for one, like to know all the avenues so that if someone comes to me and needs support or needs help, like I know which avenue they're going to try to go. And I can say, well, this is the part of the experience. You can do it yourself, pave your own way, go for it. Just know that these are probably some of the things that could come up. That being said, I think the deeper part of that is trust. Where does your trust lie? Does your trust lie in you, or does it trust lie in someone else? And if it's lying in someone else, we're here to tell you, you cannot work through a crisis with it being in someone else. It can't happen. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. And I would love for it to be the case. That would make it a lot easier, I think. But I don't think that if it were the case that we'd pull through the way we have. No. And I'm glad you mentioned, because, you do have the support. Like we couldn't travel and do everything we do if we didn't have the guys that go to work and do what they do and all that good stuff, and allow us to do, like we used to call it a crazy. I don't even know if it's crazy anymore. It's just like, he gets up and goes to work, they do their thing, and then we're all, but we can do that because we have that. So look for the support you do have to allow you to do what you need to do, which is probably very different than what they're doing. And I honestly think I picked that on purpose. I know we did, actually, because I'll come into the planet and do this, but I need somebody who's going to do this, that, whatever, so I don't have to worry about it. And then later on it gets confirmed, like, that's exactly how you came in. Okay, so we're doing this again, right? But there is, I love that shit. Okay, lose your shit. Let's call it a detox. Thank you for pointing that out, because it's true. You can't take the same shit with you where we're going. So might as well lose it, right? And then allow yourself to attain the new knowledge. But it's really interesting. So Angela and I were kind of brainstorming and saying, okay, we need to figure out how to create a support system for the people that really need it and probably don't have the support that they need. We were talking about it last week. Like I went through school and I had study buddies. And I'm like, I would have not had made it through school, through my master's program, if I didn't have like my weekly buddies coming over, having coffee, whatever, and getting our stuff together. And I'm just like, oh, I did it myself. I don't need a study group. And I'm like, well, that's great. But we need a support system so that those of us that can do it alone, kudos to you. I needed support. And that's why we were talking about creating. And we have created this course where we can actually walk you guys through this process, kind of like a how-to, how to get there and questions and all that good stuff, whatever, in modules. And so we're going to talk a little more about that. That should be launching next week, you think?
Yes.
Next week, we're going to be offering a program that has quite a few different options. Angela has been offering, she's been mentoring people through Voxer, and Voxer is just like, it's a voice app is what it is. And so if you have questions or whatever, you literally audio and then you send it to her, and then she sends you back her response in audio. So you're busy, you don't have time to sit with somebody for a whole hour. Those are kind of things. And you had to mention, like, you can resolve your issues like in real time, right? Whatever it is. Sometimes you just get a little bit stuck, and nobody's going to tell you go right instead of left. No. There are going to be things that are going to come into you, but sometimes you just kind of need that support to like already know what you want to do. And it's just confirming, yes, that's where you should go, while we're teaching you how to learn to trust your own intuition, to learn how to love yourself, forgive yourself. So it's going to be broken down in all these amazing modules. We're also going to have, again, the modules, right, where you kind of walk through, and our background is in education. So we're really big on making sure that we're touching on all learning styles, because we know there's a lot of visual learners, there's auditory, there's kinesthetic. So the modules are put together in video form, so all learning styles can benefit from, and we're actually going to have activities attached to each module as well, whether they're meditations, different either regressions or actual, things you're going to do with your hands. So you can literally heal up, understand, grab the intuition, and create a new memory in your cells to get to figure out how to do things moving forward. And this comes along with what we talked about, like blowing up everything you knew in the past if it's not going to be sustainable for where you're going. Like, why take old tricks somewhere where they're not going to work?
Yeah.
It's like taking tools to a place that doesn't either require them or uses completely different tools. And that's what we're seeing. And both of us have had a little struggle with that, because we have been asked to let go of the things that we've known. And you want to, with the promise of you getting something better. But when you don't know what it is, because let me tell you, a lot of the stuff is unknown because we're still creating it. You don't want to let go of all the years of experience that you've learned to do certain things, because the tools are freaking amazing, but they're telling us that we may not need them where we're going because they're going to come in a different format. So that also is something that we are continuing to heal on a daily basis. So we understand the importance of having somebody come alongside of you and figuring out how to make sure we're simplifying it, because we're all about we'll come here and get our butts kicked and then go back and like create shortcuts for you guys. Yeah, because that's what we're supposed to do. And we volunteer for that. Why? I don't know. It's just kind of embedded, I think.
It's our signature.
It's our signature. And we love to do it. I think that part of why this process is a little bit easier for me anyway is because I get home, I get to go back and teach people how to do this. And that's what brings me passion. So a lot of it, yes, I'm doing for myself, but there's a little like, hey, you get to teach everybody else. So it makes me a little bit stronger, I think.
Yeah. I think, what else should we talk about with this crisis? Again, become an asking machine, like question absolutely everything moving forward. 2023 is a phenomenal year. It's also a very crisis-oriented year, and we're going to see more and more crisis as we move through, because the narrative wants to hang on. And when we are shifting consciousness, that old stuff has to die. So what if we started looking at these narratives or these things that are these crises that are starting to play out as the end of periods or ends of cycles, ends of patterns. But we have to choose something else. And when we close a door, we can't go back through that door. And so we have to end up all of these things on a more conscious level. What if the ending of those things means that you are ending all of these karmic patterns? And really, karma is just about a repeating pattern. So if we're going to stop these repeating patterns, then we have to stop paying attention to them and we have to choose something else. So my question to you, and for you to ponder, is what are you going to choose? If we are here honestly creating a shift in consciousness and a new world perspective, what kind of a world do you want to live in? That's a big question, right?
Yeah. Well, we're
It's
probably
a-
going to add to the module because it's kind of detailed.
It's a big question. Like, have you ever really, really thought about it? Sure, all of us want to have a more peaceful world, but how do you create a peaceful world?
Yeah.
Well, how do you create peace within you? If you're not feeling peaceful inside yourself, you cannot create a world that's full of peace. So if you have inner dialogue, inner conflict, inner separation between your soul and your humanness, I can guarantee that peaceful world is just a dream out in space someplace. It's not actually a reality of who you are and how you can create that in a world. I mean, these are big concepts. These are big questions. You have to move out of the tininess, the minute, the minutia of the energy of being a human, and connect with that universal mind, the one that sees bigger concepts, bigger ideas. Like when you are shifting into a different conscious era, especially one that's beyond 5D or 7D or 10D or 12D even, because we've already done those. And when you are literally moving into something more unified, what does unified mean? Like, that is a big question. Like, how do you unify your own energy? How do you become so trusting of who you are that your energy becomes a unified state and you never doubt yourself, you never not trust yourself, you never like get disrailed, right? You don't do those kinds of things in a unified state.
It makes sense that we're being called to ask people to unify their human self with their soul self, right? Because that's where unification starts.
Yes.
We can't even fathom what it looks like Angela was mentioning. You have to create it within yourself.
Yeah.
So this is the new earth you're creating. It's literally here. It's taking all the crap, literally, you guys, the crap that has let us down so many times. And for some reason, because it's a freaking default setting, we keep going back to the same thing. It's going to be, I mean, very shortly, you won't be able to do that anymore. No. You just can't go back to your old ways. There's no support. I mean, even last year, 2 years ago, you were talking about how we could no longer survive. The energies do not support survival mode. They don't support survival mentality, just barely. They don't. So if you're still living off of those old patterns and we're in thriving new creation mode, hello, right? Manifestation right now is so quick. There's so many things happening so quickly for the good thoughts or the bad thoughts. So you have to literally figure out, like Angela asked, where do you want to move? What does it look like? What can you pack? What do you not get to pack, right? And they're going to go through a grieving process. Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about that too, because all of you listening have probably already died to an old version of yourself. Right. And it was not fun. It was a little painful. Happy to report that the grieving process is a lot faster than ever, and it doesn't have to be as painful as it's been in the past. That's old crap. That's also not supported anymore. So it's a good thing that all that old stuff is dying out. We met somebody who started going through the transition like 20 years ago, and there's a lot of aches and pains involved and whatever. And I'm like, hell, I'm glad she did that shit, because it's going to make it easier for me. And so even though I was very empathetic to the suffering, I kept thinking, well, holy crap, good thing I wasn't called to do that 20 years ago, because I would have not been able to hang, right? But now with all the support coming in, Angela, and the new support that we've never even seen before, okay? We have support coming, you guys, that we've never experienced before. I asked Angela a question this morning. Do I have to intend or kind of organize the things that I want to blow up in my life? And she's like, yeah, no, I think it's going to happen automatically. Like, I still had that old mentality, like, do I have to set the intention, blow this shit up first, and then this second? She's like, yeah, no, it's going to be automatic. So think about an amazing force that's coming in, these amazing codes that are coming in. They're going to just scan you and say, yes, 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 nope, that's got to go. And it's going to separate it. And all we have to do is listen, allow ourselves, do some of the work so we can learn how to do it. So moving forward, we have to ask nothing from nobody.
Receive the new is that's a big one.
Yeah.
You know, we're not used to receiving. We're not trained in receiving. And so that's a big one as well. And be willing to actually create a new consciousness, you know, like be willing to be a little weird for a little while.
And even though it's a little scary at times, you guys, it's a little scary. It's not like before. Like, I would call myself a chicken shit all the time because I was very fearful. And I come from a long line.
You're a recovering chicken
I'm a recovering chicken shit. That's the last time I'll say that, because I don't want to confirm that. I don't want to keep making that statement. But for those of you out there, I'm going to sacrifice. And yeah, and Angela can attest to that. A recovering chicken shit. Because the things that I've been called to do, you guys, honestly, I mean, she laughs at the shit I was scared about, but she's a little evil that way, I tell her. But she supported me through that process as well. And I was scared of, one can call them little things, right? But it's from a long line of generational crap that I came to clear. So a lot of times it was very frustrating that I would be scared. But the things that I'm scared about now, I'm scared enough just to have an impact placed where it shows me, remember how if this would have happened in your past, you would have freaked out for months. Now it's kind of like, it's an impact is what it is, to help me transform the things that I need to. So we need to move out of fear, out of control, out of manipulation. And a lot of times it's an outside force that we've created into an internal force that we've embraced and fed. So we're going to stop feeding that, to make sure that you guys are living your truest self, who you were designed to be right now, and then moving forward, because we're all in transition, you guys. We're all doing this together. And we'd love for you guys to join us on this journey.
That's a great question. Are you willing to give up domination, manipulation, and control in order to create a more unified world? I mean, gosh, if we just think about that for a second in our life, like, where is there domination and control? Where do you try to control yourself? That's not useful for a shift in consciousness.
Dun, dun, dun. We're going to talk about this next week. That was lovely. I forgot that was what we're going to share, but we were going to talk about control and the anxieties around it. And here's what's crazy. She asked that question, you guys, and somebody could be like, of course I'm willing to give it up. No, it's not that easy. We're not. I know we're not. Like, you're like, what the hell? Why would I want to be controlled and manipulated? Because somehow it's safe.
Yes.
Somehow we think that if somebody else can tell us what to do, that they have our best interest in mind. And I come from that background, right? In different type of organizations. Oh, well, they know whatever. But when she asked you guys, are you willing to? That means that you're leading yourself. That means that you're trusting yourself. That means that if anybody says, come over here, you're going to be that asking machine. Why the hell should I go over there? What do you have to offer me?
Exactly.
And we're not used to doing that.
No.
Right?
No.
So you can be willing, but that's something you have to learn to do as well, to let go of that little ledge that you've been holding on to, that's been keeping you whatever safe is, because there's no more safety in that anymore, you guys, especially if it's not being supported. So I'm so excited to talk about that. God, do I have experience with that crap.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the narrative. Like, you can't create a world of separation if you don't create a world of fear, a world of domination, a world of control, and a world of manipulation. Like, those are the key components of a chaos world. And that's really where Earth has been over the last 26,000 years. And you can't organize the energy of chaos enough to create unification. You have to literally shift it into it. You have to transform it into it. And how do you do that? Well, we're doing it this lifetime through the human.
Take care of the human.
That is some powerful shit right there.
Take care of the human. It's funny, Angela, when we talk about that stuff all the time, like, just be so okay with breaking into this new who you are, even if you don't know who the heck that person looks like. But it'll get revealed to us as we need. And let me tell you something. I used to feel dumb because I felt that way, that I was okay with control manipulation. I didn't say it out loud verbally, but it's psychological warfare. They literally study and they do it on purpose. And the minute I started realizing what that was, I didn't feel so dumb, air quotes, anymore. It was like, oh, they knew, because they had studied us. And they went in and literally implanted psychologically, you guys, how it is that they wanted us to respond. So everything you're watching, be careful. Does it create fear in you? Does it create manipulation? What does it create? So be focused on what you need to hear and what you need to see. And even though there's a lot of tragic things happening, they're distractions. I promise you that's how they use that psychological warfare and implantation to continue to control you. But for those of you who are ready to not be controlled and manipulated anymore, it's going to sit very differently with you. So be aware of the different reactions you have for those things. And that is the beginning of so much wisdom, you guys. So be open to receive. God, I don't even know.
Well, I think we need to touch on that a little bit, because there are people dying. There is And we're not trying to say we're not trying to say anything about that. There are people dying and there is grieving going to be happening here. Just keep in mind on a bigger scale that what if it's possible that people leaving the earth are those who are not committed to the shift in consciousness? And it's okay to leave the earth. Honestly, we believe it's a natural process, but it's really not a natural process. We can poof out anytime that we want. When you're in your power and your own control, you can pretty much do anything. Now, that being said, it's a whole different topic, but there are people leaving, and for that we express our sympathies and our sorrows, but on a bigger scale, we know that that's part of the process here. There has to be people that leave who don't want to shift, and it's okay not to shift. It really is.
Yeah. And please know that's coming from our heart. There's no easy way to say it when
Right.
you've kind of been informed. Like there's a lot of talk, oh, there's the most souls on the planet than there ever has been to help in consciousness. But nobody thinks they come to go voluntarily. And that's the key word, you guys. Nobody's leaving by force. They are volunteering to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but that helped me embrace death a little more, helped me understand it a little more. And you can't say again, we can't be like, oh, people are going to, there's going to be a lot of loss.
Mm-hmm.
So prepare yourselves for learning how to embrace, the losses that we're going to be having, because it is part of creation, you guys. And it sounds so weird to say it, but that's what they came here to do. They came here to be a part of that shift. And that means dying. Right. And they just don't want to go to the new place, and that we love them and we thank them for their sacrifices and everything they came here to do for us. And I'm just grateful for those souls. I'm super grateful.
Well, so let's add a little bit more depth to that. It doesn't
Of course,
mean,
that's Angela adding more depth. Here we go.
it doesn't mean that they don't want to go to the new shift in consciousness. It means that they don't want to do the work to get to the new shift. They can it looks like a good portion of them will just automatically do the leap to the quantum jump and come into the new after it's already created. Perfectly fine as well. So don't ever think that a soul is lost or a soul is gone or any of those. That crisis, here's that is actually a perfect way to dominate and control someone is through your grief.
Yeah. And
which is horrible to me. It's like one of the worst atrocities that have been created through humanity. Again, all boiling back to who you are, trusting your own self, trusting your own knowing, the ability to communicate beyond what we think is communication is one of the new tools coming aboard. And so, like we've had glimpses of what telepathy might look like in the future. I can almost say that I can see that one. I can see that there's, so between now and then, what are you going to do to clean up your thoughts?
So you can hear that shit.
Well, so that somebody else isn't hearing your shit. Somebody else isn't hearing your thought about them. I mean, that this is where we're going. And when I say, are you ready to give up domination and control? That's part of it. That's playing into the whole control thing, is that we can't read each other's thoughts, but what happens when we can?
Yeah. The less congestion, the better, right? And those are all things we're going to learn to do, you guys. And you're not going to be by yourself trying to figure it out. Not when there's support here to help guide you guys.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Yes, it is exciting stuff.
See, whenever we get worried about the beat down process, we're like, but we're going to get to teach this. Yay. And that kind of helps us, stay afloat. So we love you guys for also being here to support us, even though a lot of you don't know how you're supporting us. You're definitely doing that. So we're super grateful to you and all your sacrifices as well. And thank you for sending us good juju, because I feel it all the time and people are excited that we're here as much as we are. So we'll see everybody next week.
Yes.
Thank you for joining. We love you guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for being with us today. To find out more about Angela, visit her website at www.angelablaha.com. To find out more about Velia, please visit her website at www.coachvelia.com.